The automatic promotion race in the EFL Championship is over, done and dusted. Leeds and Burnley will definitely be returning back to the Premier League. It was all confirmed yesterday. With 2 rounds to go, as is traditional, we will have a deep dive on how they did it. We'll start with Leeds today. We'll have a look at Burnley during the week as well. It's going to be a bit of a crazy one because we're coming off the back of Easter weekend, but we always do this, and I love to look back and try and hopefully tell the key points in the story. It's always a difficult place to know where to start. You can go back and back and back and back and back. So I will begin on the 4th of July 2023. So nearly 2 years ago, Leeds relegated from the Premier League. Importantly, they were up there for more than one season, so 3 years of parachute payments coming in. The clock is ticking. Who are they going to hire to get them back into the Premier League? Daniel Farke, German manager, known to Championship fans for 2 promotions, not just promotions, title wins with Norwich City. One, you have to say, was extraordinary in 2018-19, out of nowhere. Brilliant from Farke and Norwich. The other, well, they were relegated. They were a year 1 parachute team who kept Emi Buendia and Teemu Pukki, and it was a little bit more straightforward the second time around. So Farke clearly bought in as the guy who knows the ropes, who knows how to do it. Had he managed a club of, the kind of intensity and, to use his words, emotion of Leeds before? No, that was going to be different than Norwich. But the Championship, still a unique slog that Farke knew all about. Later that month, and this is all a bit hodgepodgey here with the timing, takeover approved. Obviously, 49ers Enterprises, who took over Leeds United later in the month, were the people that hired Daniel Farke. So lots of toing and froing and goings on in the background. And I think it was just final EFL ratification needed. But what is important to stress here is perhaps you could argue that the late nature of that takeover and the time it took to be ratified didn't help Leeds in season 1 in the Championship. Maybe if it had been done 6, 8, 10 weeks before, I don't know if my timelines will even stretch back that far with the Premier League ending, maybe life would be easier. But in the reality that Leeds were living in, it was delayed, and that did make a problematic start to their first season back in the Championship as they look to return to the Premier League under Daniel Farke and 49ers Enterprises. Let's go to the end of August last season, of course, and the closing of the transfer window. Now, there was a great deal of mess to be cleared up with some very badly written, frankly, contracts, which seemed to very much advantage the players who signed them and not the club who were paying the players. But that's by the by, and well, I say it's ancient history now. I think Leeds are still kind of paying the price for a few of those contracts. But importantly, where did this team that was promoted start being built? It is in this summer. Obviously, players were maintained from the Premier League, but here comes Joel Piroe, kind of proven like Farke, scoring lots of goals for Swansea. He's made 34 starts this season in this promotion. In came Ethan Ampadu. Injuries meant that he's not made the amount of starts that Leeds would have hoped. Only 24, but he is the captain and pretty much the first name on the team sheet. Also came Joe Rodon, only on loan to begin with. However, we know how important that signing is going to be across 2 years. And dare I say, a reserve goalkeeper called Carl Darlow signed. More from him in about slide number 8 of this. I don't want to go chapter and verse on last season. However, let's just go to the end, skip to the end like I used to do at school. Terrible, hey? 6th of April, we're into 2024 now. Leeds lose 2-1 at Coventry. And this really exciting run to promotion with Jorginho Rutter and Archie Gray and Crescencio Somerville and Willie Nonto kind of, firing the team towards promotion. it's all going to kind of fizzle out. A lot of people suggest that a young team just kind of ran out of steam, and in all actuality, they are going to win 2 of their final 9 games. That's including tournament football, the 3 they play in the playoffs. Yes, it's easy to make it all about Leeds. This is a video about Leeds. However, I do contend that Leeds were in the wrong place at the wrong time last season in the wake of a complete unicorn freak season from Ipswich Town, who incredibly from League One then took second place. If that doesn't happen, Leeds are promoted in second. But again, in the reality we all live in, Ipswich did have the unicorn season with the unicorn manager and somehow managed to go back-to-back promotions, which left Leeds in third and left Leeds in the playoffs, where they don't tend to do very well, Leeds fans tell me, and they lost 1-0 to Southampton. And I do think that we can run the narrative of them running out of steam, because it was just a bit of a damp squib of a playoff final. I know it's not the 90s anymore. We don't get 4-3s and 4-4s and whatnot, but it was a bit of a meek surrender in the end from a team that really looked like they were powering towards automatic promotion, tucked in behind Leicester sort of in the early spring. So that was year 1 of Daniel Farke and Leeds, which takes us to obviously year 2 and the actual promotion. And I think we'll get to it at the end. I think a key thing that owners, not that they care what I say on the internet here, but maybe owners of parachute teams can take, is don't panic. Okay, we all understand if you have a good team and you just miss out on promotion, that team will get absolutely pillaged. The chasms in English football money distribution do work both ways. Yes, on the one hand, it's nice to get the parachute payments, but on the other hand, the players that you're spending the wages and the transfer fees on are not going to hang around if you do not get promoted. Let's go to the end of this past summer's transfer window. And fair play to Leeds and the kind of higher ups there. This is pretty much the completion of the team. We can talk about the goalkeeper later on. But Rodon on a permanent. That is, I think, 44 starts. I haven't written it down. Yeah, I did write it down, didn't I? Up there. Maybe. Yeah, 44 starts this season. Bogle, great signing. Actually, Gray played right back all of last season, didn't he? 42 starts for Bogle. Tanaka, what a brilliant signing. Usurping Kruev, who wasn't cheap. 35 starts. Solomon on loan, 28 starts. Rothwell, this surprised me, 24 starts. I suppose the injury to Ampadu. So that's the rest of the team built. We cannot ignore the fact that Ruter, Gray, and Somerville, not just the star players, but all the young players with the highest value, had to be sold to kind of manage this transfer window. But the team is built now, and it's a mixture of 2 transfer windows. And from the Premier League, Meslier, okay, Strowick, Firpo, James, and Aronson are pretty much the kind of bedrock of this team, along with then Piru, Ampadu, Rodon, Meslier stroke, Darlow, I guess, Bogle, Tanaka, Solomon, and Rothwell. Let's get into this season. We know the way Daniel Farke plays. We know Leeds are a big favourite at this level. And let's go to 30th of November. We'll do a defeat. Blackburn 1, Leeds 0. Farke did tend to have trouble playing against John Eustace, didn't he? And Blackburn actually indeed last season as well as a club. However, the reason I've put that up in November is as Leeds are kind of purring towards being, well, we'll see if they go on to win the title, but certainly an automatic promotion team. This is basically the last game they're going to lose, because they lose 1 to Pompey of the next 26 games. So through November up to promotion, I think it scored 59 points or something in 26 games. From that moment on, I think that was obviously defeat number 3. And there are a few reasonably close together, but they have been relentless since then. Once the team properly settled, the pattern of play really, really fixed in. Pretty unstoppable. Pretty in the words of Daniel Farke there. 3rd of February 2025, Leeds 7, Cardiff 0. This is less about the game, but more about, in fact, that should say 1st of February there. Less about that game and more indeed about, the game's on the 1st of February. The transfer window closes on the 3rd of February and Leeds didn't sign anybody. And Farker has said, obviously, from a position of great strength yesterday, seconds after he was promoted for the 3rd time. He would have liked to have brought some players in and spruced things up. But Leeds, it's complete. We've said 5-6 players from the Premier League era, 2 transfer windows. That's the team. Nobody in January. Nice work if you can get it. Look, we have seen some teams, I mean, talk about Ipswich the previous season, maybe Bournemouth under Parker the first time, really go for it in that window and get it right. But do your business in summer if you can and let your pattern of play out across 46 games. But it's pretty helpful if the game before the transfer window closes, you can win 7-0 to kind of say, well, do we need any new players here? Possibly, probably not. 17th and 24th of February, I've got to admit, I thought it was all done at this point. But Leeds are going to Leeds because we had this run of 4 games where it was Coventry, then it was Sunderland, then it was Sheffield United. And systematically, Leeds beat a Coventry side in really sort of good form under Frank Lampard since he'd come in. Then they almost ticked off Sunderland, didn't they? Who had been in the title race for a lot of the season. But now, if you look at it, they are nearly 20 points back from Leeds. A late goal win in that one. And it was a comeback then at Sheffield United. An absolutely key head-to-head win. It's 3-1 in the end. Leeds scored a couple of goals right at the end. And you sat there, aren't you, thinking this is all done. However, a little bit of a shake in this story before we get to the very satisfactory ending for Leeds. 5th of April, Luton 1, Leeds 1. That is a run of 1 win in 6th after the head-to-head wins against Sunderland and Sheffield United. That is also the game that Ilain Meslier in goal, because against Swansea previously had a terrible game, bless him, and he was finally dropped from the 11. And Carl Darlow comes in to just calmly just save the shots you should save and make sure nobody's talking about you at the end of the game, I think was the deal that Darlow kind of signed for that run-in. But there was a lot of panic as Leeds dropped to 3rd position there. They were still on 82 points from 40 games. Projecting 94 for the season. Obviously, they've gone on since then and won 4 games on the bounce. And we have to mention it. Key in that was obviously Sheffield United's collapse. We're at a point there at round 40 where basically everyone was relentless. And it could have been that everybody would have been mid-90s or even high 90s in the top 3 race. However, surely one side were going to blink, weren't they? And all Leeds really had to do, they'd given themselves the buffer, hadn't they, with those head-to-head wins that I talked about going into that period there, so that they could slip up, which they did with the 1 win in 6 games. But then they've gone again and got over the line and just kind of kept the points per game that really has ridden through the entire season. Unless you're Reading 106 points or whatever year that was, you're going to have a bad period at some point of a few games. And Leeds rode it out. Sheffield United collapsed, didn't they? Which took us to yesterday. It was Luton 6, Stoke 0. I guess a little bit of a shame for the Leeds fans that they're in the stadium and they know they've got to wait for Burnley and Sheffield United to play. Look, all fan bases moan about TV, but all clubs, the biggest kind of income they have on their balance sheets most years is the TV money. So it is what it is, and it's a shame they couldn't celebrate in the stadium. But Leeds pummel Stoke 6-0 to go to 94 points. Burnley beat Sheffield United, and it is all she wrote all over. So Leeds are up after 2 years in the Championship. How did they do it? Well, the first thing they did, and some people agree with this logic, some people don't, they brought in a manager who's been promoted from this division before. A lot of people would do that in the future. They'll continue to look at it. Farker has now been promoted 3 times. He could go on and win a 3rd title. Just needs to win another 2 games, match Burnley for the last 2 games, and he is going to be a 3-time EFL Championship winner. Yes, there was a lot of sorting out that needed to be done. Obviously, there's a takeover in there as well, which is a bit of a fly in the ointment in the normal how do they do it story, because, you know, very few teams are going to come down and immediately been taken over, even though it is very kind of prevalent in English football, particularly with American ownership, as has gone in at Leeds, as has gone in at many clubs. Look, you can say what you like about the first season. I don't think you can ignore Ipswich's unicorn season. Leeds did get 90 points, and they didn't make it. And then I think one of the key things in this is don't panic in the second year. Yes, players are going to be sold. Could have sacked the manager, fine. Could have made massive wholesale changes. They already had Piru and Purdue. They got Rodon back. They addressed the area there of right back. They tried to address Somerville and Ruta with Ramazani and Solomon, etc. They rode it out. They kept the pattern of play going. You know that the year 1 parachute teams, which was Burnley, Sheffield United and Luton this year, are going to have more money coming in revenue with that payment than you are. But it's not a gargantuan difference, and you know there's going to be less stability there. If you can keep your stability, keep the pattern of play, take on good work from the previous year, go one better. That is what Leeds have done. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's try and look. It's packaged in a bow. It's all finished. I know, spiteful tribal football fans, that battle never ends, even if the promotion battle has ended. So let's try and have a good faith conversation about it. There will be fans of Leeds who will completely want to ignore the financial advantages. That's wrong. There will be fans of teams and fans of people that don't like Leeds. They're going to want to make it all about the financial advantage. Let's not exaggerate. It's significant. It's an issue. It's not the be-all, end-all, the beginning, middle and end of the conversation. There's also Leeds fans I know that have made their position on Farke, and they are going to stick to it and cling to it because they don't want to change their mind. They've said now it's in spite of Farke, and even if he gets promoted and wins the title with 100 points, he'd have got more points if he just dropped Ilhan Melier or if he'd just done this and just done that. Those people, you're not going to change their mind. They're more concerned with being right on and sticking to their position than maybe on giving Daniel Farke some credit. And he's doubled down on this, Leeds being an intense, emotional club. Be honest, it is. It's a crazy fan base. I saw comments, and you shouldn't judge life on comments on the internet, saying, take Farke out 5 games from the end. Bring someone in to get them over the line. Panic. It's all over. I watched the Square Ball podcast after that Luton game, and I like the lads, but they said they'd gone into the acceptance phase, that they weren't going to be promoted. And that's probably the biggest Leeds podcast, isn't it? And that was the messaging 4 games ago. And now they're already promoted with 2 games remaining. So it is a crazy intense club with, let's say intense rather than crazy views. But get your views in via the comments. As I say, let's try and have a good faith conversation. We're talking about something that has now happened. I know people will, who want to rain on the parade of the Leeds fans will now say, oh, you're about to get relegated in the Premier League, daddy. Yeah, whatever, we'll talk about the Premier League. We've got plenty of time to do that as we go through the summer. Let's talk about a promotion for Leeds, how they did it. Keep calm. If you're a triggered, emotional Burnley fan and you want me to talk about them, I will do it. I need to speak to Sam Parkin later. I need to speak to Matt SB, so I may not be able to do it until Thursday, but I will damn well do it. And we'll be full of praise for Burnley as we are for Leeds. Get your thoughts in the comments. Leeds promoted. That's how I think they did it. You have your say down there in the chat.